Hey, everybody. Welcome to Comics Discourse 114. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Newberry.
I'm Brian Clark.
And I'm Hassan.
And tonight we have a special guest joining us, Dave Wielgosz from the current book from Ignition Comics, Showdown. He is the writer of that and a longtime editor at DC Comics and IDW. And you even did a little work at Marvel in your time, didn't you?
I was an intern at Marvel. That's right. Intern at Marvel
That's
and
what I thought.
DC.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we'll start off talking about your new book. I think issue one is the only one out so far, right?
Issue one came out in the middle of May, and then we had our longest break between issues, between one and two. We took June off. Issue two comes out July 8th, and then we're going to be issue three in August, four in September, and five in October. So I'm doing the rounds, making sure people know, hey, we're back in stores, we're on the shelf, and issue two I think is even better than issue one. So I want to get as many eyes on it as possible.
Well, you graciously sent us the first three issues, so we are current. If we get into spoiler territory, tell us to shut the hell up. So,
We'll be careful. We'll be careful. We'll be careful.
oh, but it's from you're putting it out through Ignition, which
Mhm.
is slowly starting to get some traction. I don't want to say slowly, but they're getting some traction in the last 6 months or so. Starting to see a lot more volume out of them and a lot of diverse creators. But I want to talk about them in a little bit. But why don't you give us the quick rundown of what's the hook for Showdown, and then we can talk more details on it.
Sure thing. Showdown is a five-issue crime thriller slash modern Western miniseries about a young woman named Trish Sullivan who comes back to her hometown after her brother has died. She blames another man named Harvey Harlow for her brother's death, and she is going to challenge Harvey to a fight, to a showdown. She either wants to hurt Harvey. If she can't hurt Harvey, she wants Harvey to hurt him. And our miniseries takes place over the initial challenge to the fight, the 48 hours both of them take to kind of take stock of their lives before their battle, and then their final battle itself. It's written by me. It's drawn by Tad Galusha. It is colored by Triona Farrell and lettered by the brilliant Clayton Coles.
Well, and we start out with, I don't want to say the ending, but probably near the climax of it,
Yes.
so we
Get
kind
right
of see
into
what's
it.
coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it pulls you
I,
right in the story, though.
Don't have
and
time to waste, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
I
best though.
get
Like, cause I love it when you just like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what's going on, but they seem very mad at each other. I gotta figure this out.
these two people are about to
100%.
beat the hell out of each other, and I want to know why.
What is up with this bet?
Well, and that was the other thing was that I got a very good lesson from a colleague of mine named Jake Williams, where he said, "Hey, if your book is called something, you should do that in every issue." So I knew we were going to build up to this ultimate showdown at the end, but I was like, if we don't have a showdown in every issue, this is going to be a very boring comic book. So obviously, in the first issue, we flash forward to the end, but in every issue leading up to the final issue, we have some sort of big conflict, whether it's physical, emotional, both, or just the kind of conflict you have where you're like, I'm going to stare this person down until they know I hate them, which I think we've all been in at some point.
Yes.
And reading the first three issues, we realize Trish hates Harvey, and he's just. I feel like just in the first couple pages, he didn't have much. I got the impression he didn't care for her too much, but since she's coming for him, he's ready to fight. Is how I got the first couple pages.
Yeah, it's very much like imagine like, I think we all like went to high school and we had like close friends. We also like were in classes with people like every year where it's like I know that person, but we weren't friends. They didn't come to like
Yes.
my birthday. I never
Yeah.
went over to their house. Like I don't really know their parents. Like so it's like if some random person you went to high school with now has a blood feud with you and won't leave you alone. Which again it could be very comical. It certainly could be like a Farrelly Brothers movie in the '90s, but I'm playing it more like a Coen Brothers kind of grim western or something.
Well, and both of these main characters, I would peg just about 19, 20, just kind of their first year out of high
Yeah.
school, early into college, but kind of gravitated towards Harvey in a weird way. He's not a person I would have hung out with in high school by any means.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town, Arkansas, and I feel this is like in a New England type setting, but he reminds me of people I knew or have been related to. They were the big sports star. They were the shit in high school. They left thinking they were going to make it big, but failed out of college and had to come home in the first year for various different reasons. And now their life is shit. Like everything had
Yeah.
been handed to them. And now that stuff has changed, they don't know what to do. So you kind of hate the dude at first, but
Yeah.
then your storytelling, you make me feel a little empathetic to a person that I normally would not by painting more of his background.
He's
Yeah.
like young Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite.
That's incredible. That's the best comparison we've gotten so far. Oh, that's outstanding. He just needs a van. He's got to
Yeah,
trade
it's
that
the
truck
uncle.
in for a van.
It's actually Uncle Rico prequel. So
Yeah, don't tell those filmmakers. I don't want to be paying for the rights, you know? No, but I think, look, like, I think we like people less than ever these days, right? Like, I think that's
Yes.
a generality, but like,
Um,
people are kind of, there's a lot of bad folks in the world, and like, there's a lot of like folks in the world where like they can't even really justify their bad behavior anymore. They're just kind of like outright evil. So one thing I really wanted to do with this book was I was like, I want to give you somebody who did a very bad thing. And I'm not telling you the bad thing they did was like justified or right, because it wasn't. I think it was an ugly, awful thing they did. But I don't want you to hate. If you hate this person, I want that to be like a decision you make after you get to know them. You see their circumstances, you see what's become of them. Because, like, one thing that was really, I started writing this like 12 years ago when I was in college and undergrad. And I think we can agree 12 years ago was a very different time than right
Mhm.
now. Like,
Right.
we had completely different feelings about like accountability. What do we do when people do bad things? What do we do when people do bad things when they don't apologize? Like, the world and our view of morality has changed so much. And I think largely for the better, but also sometimes I think like people do bad things and then we act like we've never met a person who did a bad thing and we turn that person into a monster. And when you turn somebody into a monster, you can't be surprised when they start biting people, So that's part of what I wanted to explore here with Harvey as a character.
Well, it is interesting you talk about just the difference in the last 12 years. It's funny, my husband and I went out to dinner tonight and we were drinking a little bit. And the conversation actually turned to stuff like that of when people are consuming fandom or reviewing something, now you either got to love it or hate it. There's no middle ground.
Oh,
Yes.
And there's
yeah.
not even that with people anymore.
Yes.
It's like you can't just, all of us have our pluses and minuses. And we were even talking about just books and we got talking about like Dungeon Crawler Carl and how different people do horrible things, but you're also rooting for them. Or like The Sopranos, they're horrible freaking
Yeah.
people. But people watch 7 seasons of it, and Tony Soprano's their hero as he's going and murdering people. So something has made you empathetic and drawn to these people, but they're horrible people.
Yeah, it's so interesting too because I feel like kind of the revelation with prestige television, whether it was The Sopranos or Mad Men or Breaking Bad, was like, how bad can we make somebody seem who seems like kind of a normal American person? And then the world I think was kind of like, well, like you think those guys are bad? We'll show you some real bad people. And
Yeah.
now I feel like we kind of owe it to each other to kind of do the reverse. What's like, well, can people get better? Can people improve? Can you have empathy for someone who's done bad things? If you've done bad things, like what steps do you need to take to be better? Because like I said for a long time, like between those three shows, and there's plenty of copycats of them, the kind of prevailing narrative among pop culture was like, how evil can I make somebody before you stop watching? And the answer was pretty evil.
Yes.
I love the first issue. We're setting it up where we I can't remember if we know exactly what Harvey did in the first issue. I think we did.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you're painting him as a bad guy in the first issue, and then Trish is justifiably angry at him. But the whole second issue focuses on him.
Hmm.
And you talked about the emotional and the physical showdowns that happen, but that's where you start dissecting him and what
Yeah.
actually happens from his perspective. And I think that's an interesting take. But you also do the same with Trish. Like
Yeah.
Yes.
you're
Issue
the
three.
first issue sets you up to root for this woman. Like, yeah, beat the shit out of this dude. He's responsible for your brother's untimely death. But then you kind of peel back layers. Her brother's not the angel that she thought. Like, there's a lot more to her than just like her life fell apart, but it's not really just because of what happened to her brother. She's got responsibilities here too.
Yeah, and I think there's also I think Trish also thought she was a good person because she took care of her brother, and she kind of, in a way, like took for granted that her brother was also a person, even though he was a young person. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like by the time I was 11, 12, 13, like you kind of start like learning who you are, the good and the bad. Like,
Hmm.
like I knew when I was 13, like, oh, I love comics, I love to read, I love to write. I also knew like I think I might have like some like anxiety issues, and I think that I might like, have some. I think there might be some troubled waters coming down the way for me, you know. And I really wanted to show that with her, where it's like, hey, I think you loved your brother, but I think you also maybe were not seeing who he was becoming.
Or not, and also not seeing the flaws that just all of us have. We all
And
Yes.
have multiple, we're all
everybody,
multifaceted. Yeah.
yeah, we're all multifaceted. In Harvey's case with issue two, like, look, when you are an adult, especially by the time you're in your early 20s, like what you do, you're responsible for. But like, I also think we know people who, again, going back to being in high school, being young, growing up around people, seeing their parents, I think we all knew people who were like, that person was not set up to succeed in the real
Yes.
world. Like,
Right.
that person was not, in Harvey's case, like, Harvey was built for a version of the world we live in that like does not exist anymore. Like, if Harvey was, even if Harvey, this thing happened to Harvey in like the mid to late 2000s, I think he could have made it go away and people would have just swept it under the rug and moved on. But like, again, in 2026, that's not the world we live in anymore. And it's like, if you do a bad thing, for better or worse, like, we want to see we want to see you get yours. And I think there is like I think there is like a true justice element to that. And I think there is a little bit of a, sport element to that too.
Well, and even his friends that are trying to lift him up in the second issue are trying to do it behind everybody's back so nobody else knows they're doing it because
Yeah.
they're they're kind of ashamed. Like,
Yeah. Those dudes are something else. Yeah.
Well, and I knew his friends and crows, really acquaintances. I
yeah,
going back to the whole high school thing. We know people in high school, but after I left high school and went to college, I realized that most of my so-called friends in high school were probably more acquaintances and not really true friends.
Sure.
My true friends were really, really a small group of friends, not necessarily such a big. We knew each other, but friends. We use that term lightly, I think, sometimes, or freely, too
Yeah.
freely. Um, but going back to what Brian said, I really do enjoy. I really did enjoy the first three issues, and
Thank you.
and I'm a big crime fan. I love crimes. They all know me. I love crime stories. I particularly love this because sometimes when I read crime stories, and I'm not going to name which ones, I love the characters. We could talk about Sopranos, but I don't relate to them because I like the know. I don't know them. I don't know if someone out does stuff like that.
Yeah.
But all the people in the story, not just Harvey or Trish, but all the characters, the mother, the father, Trish's mother, father, all the I know them. I know people like them. It's
Yeah.
so relatable, and so it makes it more interesting that I see elements of those characters in who people I know in real life.
Yeah. And I mean, this book is very, very personal to me. Like, it's very much, we mentioned earlier, like the town is kind of a New England, Massachusetts town. It's kind of a fantasia of where I grew up, combined with a lot of elements from where Tad, Belushi, our artist, grew up. And I think something that remains true is like the more specific you are, the more universal you find out your experience and the experience of other people are. Like, I've talked to a lot of folks who are from like the Northeast, like New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and they recognize this place. But Brian, you just said you live in Arkansas, and you also kind of felt, you understood like, oh, this place is a little further away from me, but like the
Yeah.
characters are not like radically of another world,
No,
like
the
these,
dynamic and the characters, the setting's different for
yeah,
sure, but the type of people, very much so. Yeah, it's small
yeah.
town all over America. You'll find different versions of these folks. Yeah.
Yeah, these are distinctly American characters. Some that, I had a lot of inspirations going into this crime story, certainly, but I think like also like, a show like the Bear on FX a couple of years was a big influence
Right.
to me because like that show couldn't be more specific about like the people who work at that place or what they're doing. And I walk out of the episode going like, oh, I know a ton of people like those people,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
we're not all that different in our experience once you get like really deep down.
So, one of the things I find interesting about the story is how one instigating moment with what happens to Trisha's brother truly defines both of their lives in completely different ways, but
Yeah.
ruins both of these people.
And
Yeah.
really puts a stain on the whole town.
Yeah, and I think that was a big part of it too. Is like when you live in a small town and something tragic happens, like it ripples out. It really paints the town in a different color, and it makes people feel different ways, and like people look at you differently. I remember, I don't want to get into specifics, but like growing up, like when there was a terrible tragedy or something happened or somebody passed away very young, like you felt it through the community, you know? And we show people like giving Harvey the stink eye. But also, as you guys saw, because you're a little bit further ahead than the other readers, like there's also people who are going to go up to Trish and be like, hey, we're trying to kind of move on here. Like you've been gone, but we've been here in the aftermath, and we'd like to close these wounds too.
Yes.
Even her own parents, not just her friends. Like her dad has moved on. I'm not going to try to get too much into third issue,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, her family has. I don't want to say they have moved on. They've grieved and they're trying to pick up their lives, and she's stuck in this wanting revenge on this dude.
Yeah, and I think when you are, Trisha's parents are, this will not be a big story. They're clearly both kind of alcoholics. People when they
Mhm.
read the comics, they'll find that out. She felt like she was her brother's guardian. She felt like she was her brother's only protector, and she kind of formed a codependent relationship with him. And most of her relationships are codependent, as we see with her and her friend Sean
Yeah.
in the issues to come as well. And you know, when you are a codependent person, when you are a very obsessive person, when you become obsessed with justice because you have to control your life because everything else about your life is out of control, you the all sorts of things stick in your craw about like fairness, right and wrong. You become a very self-righteous and moralizing person. And while like, I want you to want Trish to get her revenge, part of her journey is like going, how badly do you want this? And as you learn more about yourself, your brother, your family, and even Harvey, are you going to see this through to the end?
Yeah. I mean, I think I mean, you see that more in the third issue, but that's the question is Trish going to, what's she going to, how many people is she going to hurt by going through her revenge?
Well, we
And
just see
herself
from the
too.
first couple pages, several at least. I
Yes.
mean, the house is
Yeah.
on fire.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But I
Yeah,
mean, like even emotionally, right?
yeah, and
Right.
we get a sprinkling of it in the first issue, but her relationship with Sean, like just within those first two pages, is like, I have a feeling she treated this dude like shit. And
Yes.
And vice versa. It's like
Yeah.
again when you sign up for that type of relationship, like you both know what you're getting into, and it's shared misery. Like the quote, "The misery loves company." As you get older, you deeply learn how true that is.
well, let's talk about your artist on this book, and how that came about. I did listen to your off-panel interview from a couple months
Oh, cool.
ago, and it seems like you did not know Tad before this, and you guys
No,
hit it off. Or that's
we
amazing.
we did, yeah. So I mean, this idea, like I said, I've had for 12 years. I brought to Ignition Press because I knew Jamie S. Rich, who was their editor and editor in chief and one of the partners of the company. and he knew my writing for many years, and he was just like, "Hey, I'm going to ask you for pitches in a little bit, so be ready." And I sent him this pitch. We started writing the scripts, and then he asked me to make a list of artists I'd like to work with. And I sent him the list of artists. He said, "Dave, none of these people are right for this book," and I loved it because you want the people you work with to have a strong opinion.
Yes.
You know, if you have a bad idea, you want someone to be able to pull you aside and be like, "Hey, I don't think you're going in the right direction." And Jamie very much did that. And he was like, "I think I have somebody. Just give me a second." And he gave me Tad's portfolio. It was full of beautiful, very diverse work. He drew dinosaur stories. He drew historical fiction. He drew sci-fi. My only concern was like, I didn't know which Tad we were going to get because he had so many styles. So Jamie said, "Give me a day." And then Tad came back with these two near perfect character designs for Trish and Harvey. And we'd never spoken. He just read the scripts.
Wait,
and I was like,
including the hair, Harvey's hair. He got Harvey's hair.
Yes. So the hair was a Tad thing. Tad was a wrestler, and Tad knew a lot of guys like Harvey, and he was just like, this guy has the mullet. And I was like, okay. And that's where the plot line in the second issue comes from, because I was like, oh, he has a mullet because his dad used to cut his hair, and then his girlfriend cut his hair, and now nobody cuts his hair because he's a big dumb baby and he doesn't know how to do basic stuff. Like, that's why the mullet is not a choice. The mullet is like, I don't know how to take care of myself. Please help me. And again, that all just came from Tad drawing that way. That was collaboration.
Well, Hassan has been obsessed with the hair.
Yes,
it's a character unto itself.
Mullet's back in though. Mullet's
Austin,
back
did
in.
you have that haircut when you were in high school?
I
did in elementary school.
I went through two phases. I tried to grow my hair out, but I have wavy hair and it looked like John Travolta, and so I then went to spiky hair for a whole year. I had spiky hair, or black the entire year.
I had very curly hair, and I went to school in the I was in high school in the late 2000s. In the summer after Superbad came out, people just came up to me and they went, "Hey, Superbad," and I was like, "Cool, very cool."
That's a compliment.
Yeah.
But no, I think Tad is a perfect artist for this book. I mean, it's like I feel the characters, through your writing, but his art, adds to the story, and I could see the emotion in the characters and some of the facial expressions too, especially with Trish. I mean, it helps us. It helps pulls the reader into the story with the art.
Yeah, and you guys have seen the first 3 issues, so I can speak a little bit more freely. Issue 2 comes out next week, so I'll speak a little more openly about that one than issue 3. But in issue 2, I mean, there's many pages I love, but there's a page that I'm like, I don't know if anyone else could have done that, where Harvey goes back to the football field where he used to play, and Tad draws it like something out of the Old West. Like, it feels mythic and haunted and sad, and he just nailed it. And I asked him, I was like, "How'd you do that?" And he was like, "I just drew the comic that you wrote, man." He was like, he's such a terrific storyteller. He's an alumni of the Kubert School. He's worked with folks like Steve Lieber. He's just a professional, an excellent storyteller, and a great dude and a great collaborator. The way he nails the characters is obviously brilliant, but like the environments in this comic book and how lived in they feel, like if we didn't have that, this comic just doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, the part where Trish just gets really mad and slams on the table, which is pretty early on. Like,
issue 1,
you feel her rage right away, and it's super well done. And I was like, that girl is mad as hell.
Yeah, and I mean, like, look, like, that is the other thing where, like, this is a genre comic in the sense that it has crime elements, it has Western elements, but, like, there's no supernatural elements. Nobody flies, nobody does spells. We don't have any kind of, like, fantastical creatures. I'm not saying any of that in a reductive way, because as you guys know, I used to work for DC Comics, and I hope to do so again. But, like, only certain artists can make a book like this work without those kind of elements. And like Tad does. And like I said, Tad makes the action feel like how other people make, like, Batman or Superman, where everything is larger than life and like important. Like, Tad makes the stuff that in the wrong hands could feel very mundane, feel important, feel mythic, and feel absolutely crucial to the story. And I imagine after this, I've told him many times, I'm like, I bet after this, you probably want to draw like a big action comic or some kind of or another dinosaur book, right? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna need a little break from the high intensity drama we've been doing. A lot of houses. I was like, yeah, a lot of houses.
Well, there's one page in issue 4 where Harvey has just the whole issue. You can just see this kid getting beaten down. Like life has
Yeah,
just chewed him up. And that's where you really start to feel bad for him. It's like he had one bad night that has ruined his life and he can't move on from it. And he feels bad. He wants to try to make amends, is kind of where I'm starting to feel a little
yeah,
bit like he's really realizing what he did. But then the way people treated him in that in the bar and his ex-girlfriend, you can see him either he's about to just have a complete emotional breakdown, but instead within 2 panels, Tad or 4 panels, Tad draws all this emotional spectrum and it ends
yeah.
in anger. And that, see, I'm guessing that's what fuels the next 2 days for him.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, that page in particular, I'm so glad you brought that up. The most important part of comics when it's a writer and an artist is collaboration. Like, we both have to have ideas. We both have to exchange, thoughts. And like, sometimes I have an idea and it works. Sometimes Tad has an idea and it works. The script for that page that you're talking about, the turn in issue 2, is a little bit different. And Tad called me on the phone and he said, here's how I'm going to draw it, which is, pretty normal. But they said, but here's how you're going to write it, which I was very excited about because usually an artist doesn't like tell you like, hey, you do this dialogue here. We're gonna make it do this. And if you do it my way, it's gonna work. And I was like, all right, Tad, I trust you 100%. He turned in that page, and I knew it was gonna work. And then I laid out the dialogue exactly as he said, and it was just magic. I think that page is like pretty incredible. And you're right, that page, that's the this is who this guy's gonna be for the rest of the comic book page.
And it's you can literally tell between panels 2 and 3 where the decision was made of
Yeah,
I'm not going to have an emotional breakdown. I'm just going to be angry.
yeah,
And yeah. One thing I do feel like I know we're talking about the crime and all that. I do feel like this captures small town America. Like I said, I can relate to my hometown, but I get a little Jeff Lemire minor arcana vibes
yeah.
without the supernatural stuff going on because it's a girl coming back to her hometown and dealing with the shit that she left behind, which Jeff Lemire is excellent at that small town America feel.
A
But
master.
you're capturing it as well here is kind of the comparison I'm trying to draw. So,
Thank you. No, I mean, we've gotten a lot of nice comparisons to Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Criminal, which is one of my favorite comics of all time. Also, like, it's kind of like one of the only crime comics in town right now, right? So that's kind of the
yeah.
standard bearer. But I've been telling people, like, just as much as Criminal, Jeff Lemire's work on stuff like Minor Arcana, but especially his original Essex County trilogy of graphic novels, like, I wanted to render this town the same way he rendered those Canadian towns that I'd never been to. Because again, even though I'm not from Canada, I felt like I lived in those little small farm towns. Like he just completely perfectly brought you to a place, and that's again the thing. It's a very high compliment.
Well, I know you offhand mentioned on off panel that you're already working on your next creator-owned book. Anything you want to
Yeah,
spill on that, or you want to keep that to yourself?
I'll tell you a few things, which is I'm also a big music fan, and I'm sure you guys have heard the metaphor that when you're a band or you're a musician, you have your whole life to work on your first album.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You're
and
right.
then the second album is like you have about a year or a couple months,
Yeah.
and that was 100% my experience. Where like my whole life went into Showdown as my first creator-owned book, and like all these ideas, all these thoughts I had, all these life experiences I had, all these stories I had heard, they all went into this. And again, I wrote this many times over the course of 12 years, and like when I wrote these scripts, really felt like I was writing the final draft in a way that felt very satisfying, and I was confident, and I was like, oh, like it felt deliberate. And then I started working on the second creator-owned book, and it was like learning to ride a bike all over again. And it was incredibly liberating. And one another thing I can say is like it's this next book is going to be a completely different genre. and a completely different type of story than Showdown. It's going to be a bit more of an ensemble piece. And one great piece of advice I got from my editor, Jamie Rich, because I love crime books. I want to do more crime books. I want to do more crime books that maybe are set in this world or a world like it.
Mm-hmm.
But the piece of advice Jamie gave me was, hey, I know you want to come back here. I think you will. But before you come back here, why don't you go see how many different types of things you can do? So then nobody's going to pigeonhole you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't become, oh, we only go to Dave for small town crime comics. Like, why don't you see how many different types of Daves you have in there before you come back here again? And it was tough advice because, like, once you feel like you're getting good at something, you just want to do it again. But it was the best piece of advice I could have asked for. I just think in a completely different direction. And like, I like it. I hope other people do too, but it's going to be radically different.
Awesome.
Can I work with Ignition for that one or somebody else?
Time will tell. I will tell you this though. I have loved the people at Ignition. I think Jamie Rich, our assistant editor, Nora Ornstein, Philip Sablik, Jeremy Hahn. These are some of the best people I've met in comics. Some of the best people I've worked with so far. I live in LA where most of them are located. These folks come to like every signing Ignition creators do, which is very unusual.
Right.
It feels like you're both like working for a comic book publisher, but you're also on a softball team or something. Like they just come to all your stuff and they're very supportive and like they know everything about your book and like they're just like great people to work with. So I hope I get to work with them again. Maybe my next book will be with them. I could only be so lucky.
So how did this one land with them in the first place then? I know you've had history working with folks for years, so I figured relationships played a big part in that.
Relationships definitely did. So about 3 years ago now, I left DC as a full-time editor because I always wanted to write. I've been lucky at DC that they gave me many opportunities to write. I did a dozen short stories for them and a Man-Bat miniseries while I was on staff. I know, guys, Man-Bat, everyone's favorite Batman villain.
I read it.
Boss has read it. Don't worry.
I read it. I actually read it when it was coming out, Dave. I didn't just read it for the interview.
He still has all the floppies.
I
have a story about that book too, but I'm very proud of it. But but like I got to a point in DC where they were like, "We love you. We think you're a good writer. But you've written about as much as you can write while you're here. I think it's time for you to fly." So I left DC to go freelance. I still edit as a freelancer too, because you got to make ends meet as you kind of develop your writing portfolio. But I had the pitch for Showdown, and I just pitched it to as many people who would read it, and it got turned down. It got turned down every single time. I sent it to 5 publishers. I got 5 very polite, very fair rejections, and I thought, oh, this might not work. This might not happen. And then, like I said earlier, Jamie and I were working together at IDW, and he was leaving to start Ignition. And he just said to me, like, hey, I'm going to leave to start this company. I believe in your writing. I'm going to ask you for pitches. When I do that, you need to be ready to go. So I sent him the pitch for Showdown, and I trust Jamie really deeply. So I said to myself, if Jamie says no to Showdown, Showdown's going to go away, even though it's going to hurt me really deeply to let this go. Because that's the other thing, kind of like Trish, like, I don't let things go. I'm a pretty, like, intense, persistent person for good in a lot of ways, but in other ways, like, pretty bad. Like, it makes it hard for me to move on from stuff, which is the biggest kind of sin I share with Trish. So, but I sent Jamie 3 pitches, including Showdown. He called me and he said, so we really like 2 of these pitches. And I immediately thought, well, Showdown's dead. He's like, nope, we like Showdown, but these other people at Ignition don't know you as well as I do, and this is a big swing. We need to see more. Have you written more of this? And I was like, yeah, I've written like 4 versions of it over the last 12 years. He was like, you've written this? He was like, you've written something I can read? I was like, yeah, I wrote a script in case I needed to do it by myself. That was like a 64-page version of the comic I was going to kickstart. He was like, send me that script, which doesn't normally happen. So he read the script, he shared it with everybody else, and he was like, we're going to let you do Showdown. And I could not be more grateful, because I think there was other comics I pitched them that I would have been happy to do, but this is the comic that feels the most like me. And I think to start out with, like, I wanted to make sure I was aggressively being myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's awesome for you because again, you talked about how personal the story is, and your first major creator-owned book is something so personal. I think it means a lot.
Yeah, and like I'll get to doing like other stuff. Like
Yeah,
I'll I was about to make a joke and I was like, don't make that joke. That makes you makes it sound like you're insulting someone else's comic book. But like I have more kind of mainstream ideas and I have like more different stuff coming up. But like yeah, like I love crime stories, I love westerns, and I just really wanted to do something like that. And like, when I was coming up in comics in the early 2000s, there was a lot more crime books, right? Like guys like Brian Bendis, Ed Brubaker, Greg
yeah,
Rucka,
yeah,
like every major superhero writer was basically a crime writer.
yeah.
Where now I'd say most major superhero writers are horror writers, which is awesome. And I've been doing some horror stories, and I think I will again. But like my heart outside of superheroes is with the crime genre.
Yeah. You said something earlier that I want to go back to about how
Mhm.
Tad, like your collaboration with Tad, and how he not only talked about that one particular page, but also told you how to write it. Well, do you think because you were editor at DC, does that make it like obviously you're a writer now, but because of your time as an editor, does that help with your collaboration with the artist? Like are you more open to other people's feedback? You think, or did that help you become a better writer being an editor?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I got to read scripts by like all of the greatest comic book writers of all time. I've read scripts by Denny O'Neil, Brian Michael Bendis, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Gail Simone, Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison, Scott Snyder, James Tynan. Like I've processed hundreds of comic book scripts, and I just got to learn by like reading, but also to the point you make, like I worked with many of the greatest artists in the world too. And when a comic book writer writes a comic, it usually takes them about a week or two to write the script, and then they move on to another project. Comic book writers have more projects they work on than comic artists. The comic artist, that's a 30-40 day job.
Yeah,
You're in the thick of it with them every day. Like I talk to comic artists way more than I talk to comic writers, and it made me much more empathetic to what they do. It made me appreciate what they do more. And like I just became friendly with a lot of comic book artists. Like somebody I got to know really well is Andy Kubert, one of the best superhero comic artists of the last
yeah.
35 years. My personal Batman artist from when he started the book with Grant Morrison in the mid
Yeah.
2000s,
Hmm.
and a guy who's a brilliant teacher. And Andy taught me a lot about visual storytelling. And sometimes he would come into DC to consult on things, and he would also, spend the day drawing a cover. And he'd start the day, and he'd be like, "Hey, Dave," and he would show me the blank piece of paper he had. And at the end of the day, there was a full cover that wasn't there in the morning, and it was like magic. But you also learn like it's a job. Like Andy would be like, at the start of the day I don't have anything. At the end of the day I need something, and it it makes you like appreciate what people do, but also takes away some of like the magic. And I say magic in more of a negative way, where it's like kind of like an obstacle that you put up for yourself. Where like, well, how can I do that? And it's like, well, it's a job. You start your day and you don't have something, and at the end of the day you need to make something exist. And like that's the difference between people who do this and people who don't do it. And like again, like I worked with comic book artists who like drew so many amazing things that like it made my head spin, especially my last couple of years in DC, working with guys like Jorge Jimenez and Dan Mora at the same time, two guys at the peak of their
Oh
powers
my
who
God.
sometimes would do 2 pages a day.
I,
I'd be like, what is this about?
I know.
You just hit one of
Yeah.
Haas's favorite topics is how much Dan Moore could draw in a month.
It's like not fair. Like he's kind of like it's crazy. He's the nicest man.
But
He
but
makes
to
it
your
up because he's not very good too, so he's really that's why he's fast.
Actually, I do have a couple of his original art pieces, and I talked to his art rep, and he said what like you said. I go, how did he draw so much? He goes, it's a job to him. He has a work ethic. He gets up in the morning, he draws, and he's not goofing off, and he gets it done.
Yeah, and people ask me that now. I mean, I don't have nearly the output of Dan Moore. Maybe someday I will, but I'm still editing during the day, and at night I write. Like after I talk to you guys, like I got to go work on a script, which I'm very excited about. And people are just, how do you do it? And I'm just like, well, I spent ages 22 to 29 not getting to write for a living, and now I get to. So I feel like I have to make up for some lost time, but also like, not to get grim, but like we all only have so much time, and we
Yes.
have to use it wisely and appropriately. I'm also learning to like take some days off. Like I try not to write on Saturday anymore because I need one full day to recharge. But like, if you want to do something, you will find the time to do it. You will make the time to do it. And like again, right now in comics, especially artistically, like there's people like Dan Mora, Hayden Sherman, who's about to launch the Legion,
Yes.
and Jorge Jimenez, where you're like, we're seeing people who are like not only like modern masters of their craft, but people who are doing like more than one book a month, and you're just like, step up your game, you know? If you want to be here, be here, you know?
Yeah.
Books look amazing. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Well,
There's
I
no
want to
flies on
talk a
those
little.
dudes.
I want to talk a little bit about your editor time,
Sure.
especially since you're freelancing right now.
Hmm.
Um, I notice this is commentary from me, so nobody has to co-sign on this. I do feel like I have a journalism degree from
Hmm.
way back. I'm not a journalist; it's just one of my degrees. I feel like in comics and even books nowadays, editorial is getting lost in people. They think they can do without it. You'll
Mm.
have artists that are suddenly trying to become writers, and they're amazing artists and they're amazing storytellers there, but now they're trying to become a writer for their own stuff, but they don't
Sure.
hire an editor to go through it, or the egos get in the way. And I do feel like it's becoming a little bit of a lost art for somebody to really go through a piece, give the honest critiques and the feedbacks, and even the spelling and punctuation that a copy editor would do. I feel
Yeah.
like we're losing a lot of that, and I kind of just wanted to get your perspective on that, or if that's just me way
Sure.
pontificating.
No, I don't think it is. It's funny that you bring this up because I was thinking about it a lot earlier this week because I listened to an interview with a writer who's not a comic book writer. He's a very successful television and film writer, and he's been giving a couple of big interviews this week. And his perspective is pretty much, I'm successful because I made sure everyone got out of my way and I didn't need anybody's help. To which I go, that's the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Like,
Yeah.
Nobody gets where they are by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
nobody gets where they are by themselves, and nobody gets anywhere, including my beloved Dan Mora, unless somebody went, hey, I think you can do this. Like,
Yeah.
to me, the list of people I owe to be here right now is as long as my arm. And like, that doesn't make me less of a writer. It doesn't make me less of my own self-made person. But like, there's this kind of toxic myth. I think it's particularly American where it's like, well, I did everything by myself and I didn't need anybody else. And like, it is kind of this like manifest destiny bullshit that like just isn't true. But to your point about editorial, I worked with Bob Harris was the editor in chief for a long time when I was in DC. Most famously, he edited the X-Men when they were at their zenith of popularity in the
Yeah.
90s. And Bob said to all of us on more than one occasion, if something goes wrong on a comic book, it's the editor's fault. And when everything goes right, people will never know you did anything. And it is a bit of an invisible art. I think we could also go out of our way to kind of show people what we do more. But to be quite frankly, to be perfectly honest, like we're kind of like special ops people. Like every job, every book is different. And you have to approach a book differently. Like if you can have an editorial style and you can have things you like, but like when you're a comic book editor, you work with dozens of different people. And if you treat everybody the same, and I don't mean that in like, hey, you should treat everyone fairly. That's an obvious, but like I mean like, oh, I'm gonna treat everyone with like the same one size fits all attitude. You're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because everybody's unique and different, and people need different things from you. Some people are going to need more help with structure than others. Some people are going to need more help with dialogue than others. Some people are going to need more help like with the plot than others. Like it, nobody is great at everything, at least not at first, And you're there to do different things. And yeah, sometimes like you're working with like a master comic book writer, and you might get a script where you're like, I have no notes. I should just put this through. But yeah, I mean, I think that editors are often treated like some kind of creative enemy. I think producers in Hollywood are treated fairly because we only hear mostly about the stories about the bad ones, right?
Right.
Where it's like, oh, These people are uncreative and they wish they were doing this job, so they take it out on other people. And don't get me wrong, those people exist. People who give notes for notes' sake, people who are cruel to creative people because they're clearly jealous. But like, I was taught by amazing editors, and I work with amazing editors in Ignition. And I can tell you, as someone who freelances at IDW, those editors are amazing people. And having come from DC, the people who work there right now are some of the best editors comics have ever had. And like, I think that's one of the reasons why DC's having an incredible resurgent moment right now. It's obvious that they are working with great creators, but you have to have the right editors to be like, I believe in these people, and we're going to create the room for them to do the best work possible.
But I think you've hit on what my philosophy of the editor is.
Yeah.
They are there to support and help the creative team do the best book they can.
Yeah.
Correct.
And not dictate it, not say we're going in this direction, get on board or get off, like that type of stuff. Like,
because it never works.
No.
It never works. And like we can all point to a time where we had a character we loved who clearly was maybe getting a little more editorially dictated than creatively dictated. And I certainly worked on some of those books where there's a couple directions where I'm like, I wish we hadn't done that. But again, because it's comics, eventually everything goes back to where it's supposed to. But one thing you specifically said about like, artists transitioning to writers and feeling like they don't need editors. I think that every artist eventually should tell their own story, because like artists are doing most of the storytelling in comics anyway. But yeah, I think like anybody else, like, hey, you should work with an editor, you should work with a friend. Like I have several artist friends who are writing something for the first time, or they're starting to write something, but they come to me and they go, hey, would you give me some real serious advice and feedback on this? And like, we all need feedback. None of us are perfect. None of us are in a vacuum. But on the flip side, like, how sad, how worse off would the world be if people like Frank Miller, Walt Simonson,
exactly,
in the 80s hadn't started writing for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, what a sad world. But like, Frank was edited by Denny O'Neil, and again, like there was some brilliant editors on Thor. Again, none of us are made in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can even see like current ones like Scotty Young, who's known for being an artist. He's writing almost all his own stuff now, and on DC, he's writing Lobo. You have seen his evolution in his writing skills and storytelling in that landscape improve over the last 10, 15 years. Whereas some people are just like, I can do this, and have the chip on their shoulder, and they're not open to that feedback.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing as like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say before we move on, it's also like, I think in every creative business, there are people like that who like, they get really high on their own supply, and then they're never the same person again. Like whether it's like somebody who leaves their band behind, or an actor who only directs their own material now, and you're like, I really miss when you didn't direct your own movies, the type of, again, self-made God-like person is they exist throughout all medium and all time.
Well, I wanted to ask, I'm going to do two sides of this. Your favorite story from being an editor, and then a nightmare one that you may not want to share names, but maybe you can share a situation roundabout.
Well, the
you
good
can
news
punt
is,
if you don't want to. But
okay. Well, the good news is I have so many good ones. I'm going to pick one from towards the end of my tenure. So when I worked at DC, one thing I really prided myself on was I worked with newer talent. Like I went out of my way to edit anthology titles, like the holiday specials, or like I was the editor of the monthly Batman Urban Legends title, where we like, tried to break people in. And I described myself for a long time as a great JV coach. Like, we're going to play some games, we're going to win some games, we're going to build up your confidence, and we're going to get you up to varsity so you can maybe win a championship. But, right here, we're doing fundamentals, we're working hard, and we're trying to get good. Excuse me. And my boss, Ben Abernathy, got really sick of me saying that. So to challenge me, he put me on a project that at the time was just going to be an 8-issue series, each issue focusing on one of the biggest Batman villains. And I had to put an all-star creative team on each of those issues.
Austin's just
And
lit up. He knows what you're talking
yeah,
about.
that book became Batman One Bad Day, which I edited, and it was assistant edited by the brilliant Jessica Burbe, who named it One Bad Day, because I had some truly stinky names for that book, like some names where you'd be like, why did you think that was a good idea? But when you don't have a name, everything's in play. But so I had to go outside my comfort zone and reach out to bigger names who I'd worked with as an assistant editor, but I was rarely their main point of contact. So I had to kind of like step up to the plate, show that I could edit like some of the biggest stars in our industry. And I had one of the best experiences of my whole career. And then that book was nominated for an Eisner Award. And they nominated me and my assistant editor, Jess Burbe. And they spelled my name right, which, it does not always happen. And it's just meant everything to me. And I'm so proud of all 8 issues of that book. And now those 8 issues are in a box. They're each their own hardcover, and they're in a box set with the original Killing Joke. And I just look at it on my shelf sometimes and I go, I'm really happy I left DC having edited what I think are great stories for each of the major Batman villains, but like having proven to myself that like, hey, like I could edit and I could work with anybody. Like it wasn't just like new people, which I again took a lot of deep pride in. Like I was a smart creative person who could hold my own with some of the biggest and best stars of our industry.
One of our first episodes that we ever did was covering One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
I think it was episode 11. It was one of our very first. Don't listen to it. We're not that good.
Okay.
We're not very good way back when.
And we also on another podcast, Got That by Geeks, hence we cover Batman.
You got your plug in.
Yeah, I got my plug in on that one. And we talked about a lot of the one shots, and I double dipped, by the way. I bought the issues as they came out, and then I went and bought the collection, and because I love all the stories. And
thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'll also tell you a sub story because no pun intended, because you talked about Mr. Freeze. One of the easiest comics I've ever worked on, and by that I mean Matteo Scalera, one of the most brilliant comic book artists in the world, one of the hardest working comic artists in the world. Every week would just send you 5 pages of pencils and inks. You never had to pull it out of him. He was always working and just drawing some of the most amazing stuff you'd ever seen. He's like, here's my 5 pages for the week. Here's my 5 pages for the week. Never had to bother him. Never had to put any pressure on him. Just constantly delivered. I've never met the man in person. I hope I do, and I hope I get to give him a firm handshake. But man, all those issues were brilliant. All of them were tremendously drawn. But yeah, Mr. Freeze in particular, just like a total joy,
Yeah, that was a great issue. It was so fun to read, and I mean, there's so many good moments in that series. I do think, and I'm a little biased, but I do think Batman also has the best Rose Gallery, and there's so much to do with those characters, and the creative teams that you guys picked were just incredible. It's like
thank you,
fantastic.
I'd always wished that after One Bad Day, because it was a sales success and a critical success, like I really wanted them to do the Legion of Doom. Like that's like if I had stayed at DC, I would have maybe pitched that where like we did. I guess Lex doesn't need another standalone comic, but they never hurt. Do like Luthor, Bizarro, Sinestro, Cheetah, Captain Cold, or Reverse Flash. Take your pick, and just like go out because I think DC have some of the best villains in general. But I think you're right. Like in terms of like a group, like yeah, I'd say it's Batman, Spider-Man, then the Flash for villains.
I agree with your order. That's exactly how I think of it. It's just I think Batman is sort of barely ahead of Spider-Man just because of the Joker and Ra's al Ghul and Bane. Yeah. Like he has a lot more individual characters. But yeah, I agree with that order completely. And there's so much you could do with villains. We talked about your story about Showdown, and there's so much more you could do with villains. I particularly love the Catwoman, and then G. Willow Wilson, I believe, was the writer. Oh my God, she was so incredible on that one shot. And I was like, oh man, I wish she could write more female-led characters in the Bat universe. And now she is.
And she did.
Poison Ivy.
Cat. Yeah,
Black Cat too. Poison Ivy and Black Cat. Poison Ivy, that was originally a 6-issue miniseries, is now going towards issue 50.
Which is a huge credit to her, Marcia Takara, the editor, Ariana Turturro. Like, they just believed in that book, and they made the best book possible. And the fact that book is going to hit, like, 50 issues in this market, incredible. What a massive success story.
50 anymore. Yeah.
But
All right.
It's so good.
What
Oh,
about a
oh, and a
nightmare
bad
story? Are
story.
you gonna side? Are you gonna sidestep? It's fine if you do,
No,
but I gotta ask.
I'll tell a bad story, but it's gonna be because like I was a dope, you know. Like I want to tell a story where it's like where someone can learn from my mistakes. Um, so okay, this is a good one because it worked out in the end. But I was working on two books at the same time. I was working on launching a new version of Legends of the Dark Knight, and I was working on Batman Urban Legend number 7, where we were gonna try a soft relaunch of Batman Beyond that became this miniseries, Batman Beyond Neo Years that I loved, and I was supposed to reach out to Francesco Francavilla for Legends of the Dark Knight. I was supposed to reach out to Francesco Mattina for Batman Urban Legends, and I flipped it. I totally goofed it up, and I went to my boss Ben and I said, "All right, Ben, the Francescos are in." He was like, "You got Francavilla for Legends, and you got Mattina for Urban Legends," and I was like, "No, I didn't." And then I had to go back and be like, "Hey, I don't even think I ever told them I goofed up because they're both Francesco. I think I was like, hey, I actually meant to hire you for a different book." And thankfully, because it was still Batman, they were both pretty chill. But like, if it had been a situation where like I meant to hire one of them for Batman, one of them for like, let's just say the Atom or something, they might have been like, "You told me I was going to draw Batman." No offense to the Atom, who I love. DC, call me if you want to do an Atom book. But you know, again, thank God it was just an easy Batman flip flop.
I was about to say you could have almost got away with just not saying anything.
Exactly. I could. There's a way I could have finagled that, but like I am unfortunately like painfully honest for the most part at the end of the day.
Well, while we're talking editing, Hassan
Mhm.
will have a conniption if we do not talk a little bit about what you did on the new history of the DC universe
Sure.
because yes, we I love the book, but Hassan is like way, way, way excited about it. And we went to Baltimore Comic Con last year, and Mark Waid
Mhm.
hosted a panel on it. And they also did DC Universe trivia with him.
Yeah.
So that's always fun to see. But, we were super excited just about how they weaved everything together. And we know you played a part into it. So,
Yeah.
you talk about that experience a little more, that Hassan will just pepper you with questions, I'm sure, as we
Sure.
go.
I'll take as many questions about it as I can because I'm very proud to be a part of it. It was a massive undertaking. It was one of the most challenging projects I've ever done. Not because of the people. Mark Wade's amazing. The editors, Andrew Marino, Brittany Holzer, Marquise Draper were friends of mine and editorial colleagues. So basically, what happened was, I think after death metal, there was a sense that like it might be time to reconstruct the history of the DC universe. Like we maybe had been dancing between pieces of broken glass for a while, between like the New 52, Rebirth, Doomsday Clock, and implying that the post-crisis version of the universe was mostly back intact. So it was time to sit down and like set it right. And um, it was something we were gonna briefly do like before Mark had come back to DC in a different variation, but it didn't feel right, and we didn't end up doing it then. And then a couple of years went by, and Mark came back to DC to do stuff like World's Finest and Batman versus Robin and Justice League, and it felt like, oh great, Mark Wade's back. He's one of the best and most important DC writers of all time, on top of being a great guy. I left DC, and then about a year later, I got a phone call, and they were like, "Hey, we're doing it. We're going to do the history of the DC universe, and we want to hire you as a researcher." And I was pretty reticent because like I was like, I want to add to the history of the DC universe. I don't know that I want to do this, like, because it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really involved. It's going to be really tough. I also just started writing Showdown, so I was having the experience of like, hey, I'm writing my own thing. I'm flying on my own. But like, I love the DC universe so much. Those people who hired me are very important to me, and like, it was a chance to work with Mark, who was like a lifelong hero of mine. So it felt like, hey, man, like it felt like a responsibility. I was like, if these people think you're the guy, like let's do it. And so I had a couple of meetings with Mark where we sat down and I read this amazing timeline that he put together because basically Mark was going to write the main issues where you have a visual guide to the history of the DC universe, and I was going to write the appendix, which is basically a list of everything that's happened in chronological order,
Yeah.
with like citations and also with images. And I picked all the images in the back, by the way.
Okay.
So all that was me. And I will tell you sincerely, the first issue was one of the hardest things I've ever worked on. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but next time you go through your DC events, why don't you check and see how many of them begin with "in the beginning of time," a secret history you didn't know. And we had to account for every stinking secret history that anyone had ever introduced to the DC universe, because it all counts and it all matters. And I afterwards I wanted to create like a Dave Wielgosz list of things that you can't do anymore now that we've done the new history. And one of them was like, no more secret beginnings of history. And again,
no more hands
yeah.
universe.
No, listen, if I see Krona one more time, I'm gonna lose my shit.
I can't remember. Did y'all work
fellas.
Access? Did y'all work Access in there? I can't remember if you guys did or
no.
not.
I don't think Access made it. I think like that was the thing that we talked about. I will tell you. So the first issue was really hard because there's so much early history that like you take for granted, but also like there's way more Golden Age characters than you think there are.
Yeah.
There's way more Golden Age characters than you think there are, and you want to fit them all in. But also, there's also like characters from different history, like Shining Knight, Silent Knight, Cinnamon, Batlash, like the Western characters, the medieval characters.
All the 50 billion Hawkman reincarnations over the years.
Every version of Hawkman, the Boo who's in the helmet of fate, the Spectre, so much stuff about the Spectre and Eclipso that you don't even think about. It's the foundation of the DC universe.
I was excited when I got to the page where the Outsiders were there and I saw Halo. I was like, hey, at least we're acknowledging she was alive.
Yes. I too am an Outsiders guy. I'm more of a because I was a 2000s kid. I'm more of a Judwick Tom Rainey Outsiders kid.
That's a great Outsiders run. That's the best. It's during that time period with that book and Jeff Johns' Teen Titans. Oh my God!
Great sister books.
Yes,
and the crossover between them, some of the most natural of all time. But back to new history. So the first issue was really hard. I think it was hard for me and Mark. But then issue 2, which is the Silver Age, Mark Waid was like, "This is where I eat. This is where I live." And like I was like, brother, you do your thing. Like let's do it. But then for issue 3 and 4. I remember Mark called me on the phone. Issue 3 is post-crisis through to the end of Blackest Night, I think. And Mark was like, hey, man, like, I was contributing to this stuff as a writer at the time, but this is when you were the biggest fan of this stuff. So I really need you as my backstop here, especially. And then with issue 4, it was kind of all of us. It was me, Brittany, Andrew, Marquise, and Mark, because we'd all worked on the Mark not as much, but like me, Marquise, Andrew, Brittany had worked on New 52, Rebirth, Infinite Frontier, etc., etc. But issue 4 was a big emphasis on like, hey, like this was your time, and it was post-crisis DC. Was where the comics I grew up on when I was really young, and then like I start reading monthly around the post Hush and the wind up to Infinite Crisis, and then I graduate high school right around when Blackest Night happens. So again, like this is my whole adolescence we're talking about. And issue 3 in particular, it felt like I was sitting in a time machine watching my life go by. Like I was citing comics and I was like, oh, I was at the mall when I bought that comic, or I was like, oh, this was the comic I read before I went on my first date, or like, oh, I bought that comic when like, we went on a trip to Cape Cod when I was 14. Like I remember, like, because comics are so tactile, and you just remember where you were when you read them in your life. So, like, issue 3, like, was particularly, like, surreal for me because I was, like, I just remember my life being marked by these comics. So it was really, really something else. But, yeah, and then the thing I did not see coming that I'm sure as a fan, everyone appreciated, and I'm glad we did it, but I thought I was done with issue 4, and I was super tired. I was really burnt out. I felt like we had just played 7 games in like an NBA championship. I was like, I'm out of gas, guys. Like, I don't know if I have it. Because some of those issues have like legitimately hundreds of characters.
Yes.
And you need to write about all of them. So then the fourth issue, I get a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, so we want to include a section about all the different futures of the DC universe." And I was like, I think again, these people are my friends. I love them very much. So like we're very honest with each other. But I was like, "What'd you say to me?" I was like, what do you want to do? And they were like, well, we think it'd be fun. Like we think because like some of the futures count, like Booster Gold and all I start hearing is Muppet voices and static because I'm like, oh, the mission's not done, and the biggest part is ahead of me. And I'll tell you, you think, and Mark's been very complimentary of me. He's a nice man. He's a great man, a great writer, and just a good dude. And he's given me a lot of compliments for my work. But like, there was more than one occasion where Mark was like, "You missed a few things," and I found them. And in the future section, I was like, I know I got all the stuff from the future. I know it. I know I did it. I know I did it. And then Mark was like, "Oh, you forgot this future version of Shazam from Legion." And I was like,
You forgot Thunder?
I forgot Thunder. But like, I wrote about all three at the time versions of the Legion. I was very in depth about it. I wrote about Booster Gold. I wrote about DC 1,000,000, Batman Beyond. I did such a good job. And then when I turned it in, they're like, "Yeah, you forgot a couple things." I was like, oh. But again, one of the most challenging things I've ever done, one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Because like, here's the thing. That book is great for like hardcore fans like us, but you know who that book is perfect for? Kids.
Yeah.
Kids who are dorks. Kids who are little dorks who want to know about everything. I have sold that book at Comic-Cons to so many kids who are like, "This will tell me all the stuff about the DC universe." I'm like, "Yes." And they're like sold. And for me, it was like that with like Who's Who guides, character encyclopedias, trading cards, right? Like you kind of need an intro to comics that isn't comics. Sometimes, like the history of the DC universe is a comic, but to your point, it's also like very much like a visual guide to the history of the DC universe.
Yeah, I'm an '80s kid, and I bought Who's Who's and the Marvel Handbook, even though I didn't know the characters, because I was like, "Oh my God, this history! Oh wait, this guy was killed by this person. This person did so and so." I'm like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Yeah,
who's this person I never heard of? I'm gonna go find their comics. Like that's what I would do with the Hot Mirrors.
Yeah,
those Marvel Series 1 cards. That was
amazing.
All of my information.
Yeah.
Power levels and like this character
famous battles.
Yeah. You know what's weird about those cards though? You know that like they were like written by like men who didn't take any like medical classes or had not stepped out of scale in a long time. So this character's 6'2" and they weigh 205 pounds. You're like, I don't think that makes sense at all. Like I don't. That's just not mathing to me. Like these huge men who only eat steaks, like they're big dudes. You know?
Yeah, no, they were definitely some of them were definitely off for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you have another story coming out very, very soon. Back with DC and Detective Comics Annual for 2026, right?
And in Detective Comics Annual 2026, the main story in the issue is by the all-star creative team of Tom Taylor and Nicholas Scott, and it'll be a Batman Lobo team up. Lobo, star of the summer. And the backup story is by me and a brand new artist in DC named Fran Mariscal. The story is a mystery. They haven't solicited what it's about yet, which is great for us because when folks read it, it's going to be a big surprise. And the ending is a big spoiler, but it's a story I'm very proud of. That issue in Showdown #3, actually FOC, on Monday, July 6th, I believe. So you should go to your comic stores and order both. But yeah, that will be out the last week of July. And I'm very excited about it. It was a real honor to come back and get to write a Batman story.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything about it, but Fran's art is amazing.
It is.
Isn't it something else?
I really do like it.
Yeah,
it's so painterly, so cool.
Right?
And I'm shocked this is their first work. I'm just amazed. Second, I will just say it all pretty well takes place in one building in Gotham, and I kind of want to live there. I kind of want to live at this place. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You don't? Do you want to live there the whole time?
No, not during the incident that happens in the story. It is Gotham, and it's in an annual. Something good ain't happening.
No. But so I can talk a little bit about the premise, but also to talk about Fran for a second because it's a great story. So Fran has drawn a lot of comics in Europe and Spain. So he's done other comics. This is his first American comic.
Yeah.
And he was at a convention with comic book legend Dennis Cowan, current artist of Nightwing, artist of books I sense we love, like The Question, Deathlock, Hardware, and the Milestone books. So Dennis met Fran at a show. They're sitting next to each other, and Dennis was looking at Fran's artwork. And this never happened. This is like a story out of Almost Famous or something. And Dennis goes, "Hey, man, you're really good." And Fran's like, "Oh, thank you." And Dennis like, "No, like, I'm going to tell DC Comics about you." Again, this doesn't happen very often. So then Dennis emails his Nightwing editors, who also edit Detective Comics, and goes, "Hey, you guys should hire this guy, Fran. He's amazing." And at the time, I was hired to write this detective story, and they were like, "Dave, we're going to pair you with a more established artist because you're still a green writer. So it's going to, we're going to put you with somebody who's done this a couple of times." I was like, "Okay." And then once Fran showed up, they called me and said, "Screw that. We just met this amazing new person. It's all new." And I was like, "Well, hold on a second. What do you mean it's all new?" Because I was nervous because, like, I'm a comic book nerd. I know a lot of artists. I didn't know Fran. Once I saw Fran's designs for Batman, I was like, "Oh, we're going to be great.
Yeah.
This is going to be perfect." And the story, I can tell you, it takes place at a building in Gotham City that is an art studio. And at first, it doesn't feel like it belongs in Gotham. It feels like it belongs in either Sesame Street or Wes Anderson's New York from Royal Tenenbaums. But very soon, a new tenant has an art studio in the building, and he starts to sabotage everyone else. And we'll leave it at that. And of course, Batman eventually has to get involved, but we won't say how.
Well, I will say the art style is very European and painterly, which I love. But also, you know, in these annuals, they're pretty well anthologies. You got the main story, which is a normal size. You had 10 pages here.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of 2000 AD and other European anthologies. They cram a lot into 8 to 10 pages. You did. I felt like I was reading an entire issue of Batman
Oh, thank
in
you.
10 pages. Like there's, and I mean that in a good way. There's a lot here in 10 pages.
Yeah.
You develop a whole cast of people, a whole setting, and then the rest unfolds, and I won't spoil, but it was it was a great job. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, that I've written like 30 short stories or so, and that's been most of my career. So like you learn, like, hey, like if all I'm ever I hope this isn't true, but if all I'm ever gonna get is 10 pages of Batman, I really need to make it feel like it's more than 10 pages, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise I'm gonna deeply, deeply regret it.
Yeah, the character development was awesome. Like I was like, how do I feel like I know all these characters so fast? So that like it really like fleshed out the world, and I thought that was like pretty cool, especially like the pacing of the story. You're like, where's this going? Like, how is this tying into this world? Oh, okay, this is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's always a sick person in Gotham City, right? There's always something like there's always a guy we go, what's wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate that greatly. Yeah, it's I pitched them a bunch of stories, and like it was so strange because my YouTube algorithm is mostly comics, Boston sports, punk rock music, and like clips from movies. But then this documentary, this like New York Times style documentary about this art studio in New York, came across my my algorithm, and I watched it. It was very beautiful. It was just like, oh, this community of artists who work together, and they all have studios, and they walk in and out, and they help each other out, and they support each other's art. And I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. I was like, what if we put it in Gotham City and made it ugly? And then a story was born. And I pitched like, I'm a big pitcher, so I pitched like 7 different short stories, and they picked that one. But I pitched like a Denny O'Neil kind of kung fu inspired story. I pitched like a couple like Coen Brothers-y, Fargo type of Batman stories. And then I pitched a very deeply like Grant Morrison one, and they were just like, Yeah, we're gonna go with the art studio one. I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. But I'm extremely proud of it. I hope people like it. I mean, it's such an honor to again get to write Batman, get to write a story in Detective Comics, get to
Mm-hmm.
work with a new artist like Fran, who I think has a huge career ahead of him. Someone I hope I work with again. But again, to share that real estate with Tom Taylor and Nicholas Scott, two comic book and DC legends, is it's not something I take for granted. You know.
Well, you mentioned before we got on, you had just went to the comic shop today. I
Yes.
want to know, what are you digging that's coming out right now? Not
Yeah.
necessarily today, but just lately, or what you got today.
Okay. So a book that came out today that I love. Kenny Porter, Joey Esposito, and this artist Alessio Zano just launched a book called Power Rangers Unlimited. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what if all the Power Rangers were in a Justice League Unlimited style team? And it rules. It's one of the best superhero team comic books I've read in years. So even if you're not a fan of that franchise like I am, like if you just like superhero team books, I recommend checking it out.
I am the
Um,
Power Rangers person on this podcast. The others
man,
are not.
all
Brian
right.
won't even read it if Ninja Turtles are in it. It's weird.
Oh,
He'll read anything Ninja Turtles, but not Power Rangers Ninja Turtles.
sorry, man. It's you and me morphing against the world. A couple more. Josh Williamson has been like one of the pillars of DC for many years, but I think his Iron Man run is quite good with Carmen
Yeah.
Carnero. I think that book's
Mhm.
really
Austin's
strong.
been reading it, yeah.
It's great. My deepest, nerdiest love at DC is the JSA. The JSA really got
Oh,
me into DC Comics and made me like a nerd for the full history of the DC universe. And I
Yep.
think Jeff Lemire and Diego Orleo Tuyi's JSA book is criminally underrated. I think
I
it's one of the
agree.
best books being published. Like it's fan tastic.
I'm
I love it.
enjoying the Spectre storyline that is going on right
Oh my
now.
gosh! By the way, the Spectre again, a character I mentioned earlier, who's more important than people think. A character I deeply love, but like it's hard to do a great Spectre story because like it's like you can play the vengeance of God and it's like
Yeah.
more boring and passive than it should be. But Jeff and Diego have found a great way to make it very active, make it very like troubling, and make it fantastic. I'm loving it. And then two more. I'm going to give a shout out to another Ignition book that came out today, The Dog Sitter by Jamie S. Rich and Megan Levins.
I
We
read
need more
that.
romance in comics. We need more love in comics.
Hmm.
This comic is great. And then I feel like I've said a lot of DC comics. I've said, I just said an Ignition comic. So is there, I said a Marvel comic. So what else should I promote with the time I have? Well, I'll just say a book I always like. I didn't even realize it's coming back. There's a new Shaolin Cowboy that starts today by
Oh,
Jeff
yeah.
Darrow.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like in the last like 10 years we've gotten way more Jeff Darrow than we have in most of comics. And like I think this is like the fifth or sixth Shaolin Cowboy miniseries in like 10 or 11 years, and like they're always great. And like
Yeah,
he's
they
just one of
are.
the best living comic artists we have. So I'll say those. But my favorite monthly title right now is Absolute Wonder Woman by Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman, who are just crushing it. And even when Hayden's not drawing it, every artist they pick to fill in is great. Whether it's his name is Mateus something, I forget his last name, but he's fantastic. And then Dylan Snook just did the most recent fill in, and it's brilliant. That book is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we love Kelly. We've had her on before. She talked extensively. It was early on in Absolute
Yeah, because
Wonder
we talked
Woman,
about
but-
the Cole a lot. Like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
episode.
we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that-
yeah.
she's so monstrously talented, and I mean, like I love across the board with the Absolute books how they've interwoven the other DC characters into the other series. Like they use Zatanna as an antagonist in Wonder Woman. Right now they're using Shazam as an antagonist in Absolute Superman. Hawkman's kind of an antagonist who goes across all of the books, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, this is a really well built second universe. Like it's been very fun to spend time there, and like I don't know about you guys, but like I'm kind of sick of my Showdown's a 5-issue miniseries. It's perfect as a 5-issue miniseries. We need more comics to go past issue 12, and the fact
Yes.
that these Absolute books are now all in their 20s for the most part, or in the mid-teens, I think is only good for comics because it shows like we want longer series, we want longer runs, and we are hungry for longer stories. And I hope we all get more, and I hope as a writer I get to tell some more.
Yeah, I feel like the longer runs, the thing that we have. Well, let me say it this way: we have so many short runs. I think they're
Mm.
missing the magic that a long run has. A long run could have like a multi-part storyline, but it could have that one issue that really blows your mind. It's like
Yeah,
so much happens in a long run that builds on for the future, and it's just
yes.
what we miss sometimes when we have short runs.
I miss
Well,
like 60 issue or plus, 60 to 100
mhm.
issue, or Claremont, 200 issues of
Yeah,
X-Men thereabouts. But, even Hickman doing Avengers for,
yeah,
as long as he did. I love stuff like that. And then you go back and read how interconnected it is over the years. And yeah, that I do love a good short story
yeah.
or a good limited series, but I love a massive run that's
It,
all tied together.
Well, and
without,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, like I mean, look at Grant Morrison going, one of my
Yes,
favorite Batman writers. He did he did Batman, and he jumped to Batman and Robin, and he did Batman
yep,
Incorporated, and so like it's really, even though it's 3 books, it's one long story, but he also had
yes.
individual stories as well that stood out.
Absolutely, and that's a great example. To talk about the X-Men thing for a minute, though, when you have a guaranteed 12 issues a year,
Yeah,
you then have permission to kind of like do something weird with at least two or three of those issues, right? And like, it's the weirder ones that kind of become your favorites. I
yes,
mean, talking X-Men terms, we're talking about like Wounded Wolf, we're talking about Life, Death, we're talking
yes,
about
Death.
the let's all go to New York City and shop for Christmas. Like, like the glue that holds the books together is the weirder stuff, is the quiet stuff. Like, you need the loud to do the quiet. And like, again, talk about longer runs. Like, when I was growing up, if a book went to 25 issues, they were like, wow, that book got cut off too soon. And today I'm like, you give me 25 issues, I'd cry. I'd literally cry. Also, like, because I just bought them for my collection recently. Like, can you believe that Starman went for 81 issues? You know what
yeah,
I mean? In the
yeah,
world we live in today,
yeah.
Starman, and it's one of the best DC books of all time. It wouldn't go past 12, and that's a shame.
No,
One of our
no.
friends is reading it for the first time now,
Oh my
and
God.
I think he turns 31. It's his first time reading it, and he's like, "This book is amazing," and he's just barely scratched the surface. He's like in the
But
first 12 right now.
but again,
Incredible.
to your point, that book had the longer story arcs, but it has the one shots. It has the time
Yep.
pass. It just like it's
Yeah.
telling stories, and not just one long story. It's telling multiple stories
Right.
that makes it more, the whole experience more rich.
100%. And my favorite issues are the annual like times with David, right? Where like
Yeah,
Jack spends the days with his brother in black and white. But yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like, in order to kind of have these things that feel special and feel unique, you need to give people the space and the safety to try something, like the job security. Be like, yeah, no, you're going to come back next month. Like, you're going to be here. Like, do this, do the weird issue, and to know that you're going to be okay. And like, obviously, there's also image books that are now have run for many, many years. Things like Saga, et cetera, et cetera. But like, yeah, I mean, I think especially for new comic book writers like me, or newer comic writers, like, I struggled. I am currently struggling to imagine doing something longer than 5 or 6 issues, because that is now like an incredible privilege, and one I hope I experience. But like, when I was young, the goal used to be to have like a 50 or 60 issue Vertigo or mainstream comic book run, and now I'm like, hey, the dream is whatever I get, making the most out of it.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, guys, I think we need to wrap this up. We've been going a while. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure. Well, let me get the dates of your stuff here. So, Showdown #2 comes out July 8th. So,
Mhm.
probably just a couple days after this drops. #3 on August 12th, and then folks can pick up that Detective Comics annual on July 29th.
That's
Um,
right.
well, folks, I recommend all of these. They were fun. Dave, I actually cannot wait to get issues 4 and 5 of Showdown. I honestly I read the first three all at once, and I was like, I need to know how this ends. I mean, I know how it kind of ends for the first 2 pages, but I want to keep reading. So, but
That's what I love to hear.
all right. Well, Dave, any where you want to plug social media or anything or?
You can find me on Blue Sky and Instagram. I'm Dave Wielgosz on those, and then I have a weekly newsletter called Weekly Updave. Beehive beehiiv.com, and there every week I talk about process. I talk about comics I have coming up. This week I just did an interview with the Power Rangers writers, Joey Esposito and Kenny Porter, because we've worked together for a long time. And then next week I'll be interviewing my Showdown collaborator Tad Galusha. We'll be sharing behind the scenes details about issue 2, and hopefully every month I'm going to be interviewing a different member of the Showdown creative team. So I'm going to try to interview Tremor Farrell. I'm going to try to interview Clayton Coles. I'm also going to try to interview our brilliant cover artist, the Eisner Award-winning legend, Steve Lieber. So we'll see how that goes. But guys, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me the space to promote Showdown and Detective Comics. They're both projects that mean so much to me. I'm glad you enjoyed them, and I hope your listeners enjoy them too. And your show is fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. We had a great time with you talking about your books, and we really appreciate you coming on the show.
I'd come back anytime.
Awesome. Yeah. Super thanks.
More than likely take you up on that. So you're welcome to come just talk comics anytime too, because that's what we just what we do.
That.
We just pick some shit and talk about it. So
the best shows do that.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you all next week.
See ya.